The report, titled 110 Overseas, details China's extensive efforts to combat fraud by its citizens living overseas, in part by opening several police stations on 5 continents that have assisted Chinese authorities in carrying out policing operations on foreign soil. Europe is home to most of the police stations, with locations spread across the continent in places such as London, Amsterdam, Prague, Budapest, Athens, Paris, Madrid, and Frankfurt. North America is also home to 4 of these stations, with 3 locations in Toronto and 1 in New York City. Now, there's just 1 here in the U.S., so not all bad just yet. In all, there are 54 such stations in 30 different countries. They are colonizing, expanding, and asserting cultural dominance. The report details how China has attempted to combat the growing issue of fraud and telecommunications fraud by Chinese nationals living abroad, running operations that have resulted in 230,000 Chinese nationals being persuaded to return to China voluntarily over the last year to face criminal prosecution. Don't know if I believe it. The Chinese government has claimed the stations provide vital services to its citizens living abroad, though the report notes that many of the services are those that would be traditionally carried out by an overseas embassy. Instead, the report argues that the stations have been used to enhance China's overseas law enforcement capabilities in possible violation of international law. At the very least, you should be worried about what's happening. Quote, as these operations continue to develop and new mechanisms are set up, it is evident that countries governed by the standards set by universal human rights and the rule of law urgently need to investigate these practices to identify the local actors at work, mitigate the risks, and effectively protect the growing number of those targeted. How many of these people that the CCP is accused of fraud, how many do you think are speaking out against the CCP? So they in turn claim those are lies and therefore fraud. I don't trust them. If people are in this country, then it is the law enforcement of this country, Canada or the European nations, to deal with this. But it seems China has been colonizing the world, and this is just planting the seeds. It's the first step. And it seems like things are going to be getting worse. From Lawfare blog, water wars. U.S. counters Beijing's reaction to Pelosi visit with $1.1 billion in arms sales to Taiwan. I can't imagine that China would be too happy about this. They say following House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, Beijing reacted by holding military exercises around the island. We know what happened. They began firing missiles over the island. They began encircling the island. And then things slowly simmered down. But many other U.S. officials, politicians, started traveling there. They're now saying that the U.S. responded by giving $1 billion in arms sales to Taiwan. Where do you think this goes? I'll tell you quite simply. Don't take my word for it. Writing for Real Clear Defense, China could decide now is the time for war with America. Well, there you go. Written by James Holmes. The aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman participates in a composite unit training exercise, which evaluates the strike group's ability as a whole to carry out sustained combat operations from the sea, ultimately certifying the HST-CSG for deployment. It starts with a big old 1945 for some reason. It says, will a peak China decide now is the time for war with America? Hal Brands and Michael Beckley have breaking news from 1832. Namely, that it sometimes makes sense for the weak to pick a fight with the strong. No less an authority than Karl von Clausewitz affirms it. Suppose, postulates Clausewitz, a weaker contender is in conflict with a much more powerful one and expects its position to grow weaker every year. If war is unavoidable, should it not make the most of its opportunities before its position gets worse? In short, it should attack. Verily, Clausewitz is a man for all seasons. If you know your important trend lines are turning against you, if you expect your strategic standing vis-a-vis your antagonist to be worse next year than this, then he advises you to strike now. Otherwise, you'll get less than you might. Your window of opportunity might even slam shut by next year. Simply put, anybody who understands market economics knows what this means. You want to buy real estate. I'll tell you, we're trying to set up a brick and mortar location so we can do like a community center, game shop, skate shop kind of thing. And these building owners are like, nah, I'm going to wait. And I tell them, like, you sell now, you're going to get what you get. And it's not what you want. You wait till next year, you're done. You'll never sell. Now you're underwater.